If you want to improve your bird photography, this is the place. Today's guest is Bayou Josh, an avid bird photographer. He's also a popular photography blogger with 10,000 or so subscribers and lots of people watching him on other social media. So Josh is going to share some of his bird photography techniques, and we're going to discuss 5 or 6 of his photos after a bit. Welcome, Josh. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Kirby. Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. So tell everyone about your photographic self. How'd you get started, and bring us up to date?
Yeah, so it's relatively short journey thus far. I bought my first camera back in 2013. My wife and I were avid bird watchers prior to that. And my wife, I tell this joke often, but my wife said it, and it's worth repeating. She said, if I could just press a button on these binoculars, and get a picture of this, I would love it. And I said, Katie, that's a camera. We're going to have to invest. So, so we went out and bought a camera, and you know how hobbies work, man. It takes just a little bit to get started, and you can go right down the rabbit hole. So for the last, 2013 to now, 9 years, I've been chasing birds all over the place, from Louisiana to Texas to now in Boise, Idaho. And I absolutely love it, Kirby. I think I'm a bird addict, if that's such a thing.
Oh, it's definitely a thing, and I think you are. All right. So where's the Bayou part come from?
Yeah, so I grew up in Louisiana, in a little town called Tickfaw. If you know where it's at, it's a good chance we're related. Tiny little town right north of New Orleans.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And I started my bird watching down there, painted buntings and prothonotary warblers, and just chasing them around in the swamps. And, when you start a social media account, you start to realize how common your own name is. So there's a lot of Joshes out there. So I decided to put that Bayou in front of it. And it just kind of stuck with me. And that was literally the day I started photography. My daughter told me to start an Instagram. And, if your teenager suggests something to you, you might as well. It's usually good advice, right? Don't teenagers give good advice? That's what
they certainly do. Yeah, and lots of it.
That's exactly right.
Got a teenage granddaughter.
They're the best. They're the best. Love my daughter. She's fantastic.
So you call yourself an avian bird photography hobbyist. Why birds, and what draws you into bird photography?
Initially it was the treasure hunt, right? I mean, there's these little bitty birds fluttering all around us, and 90% of the people don't even see them. They walk right by them. And, I can think of a time when there were some painted buntings. I don't know if you're familiar with those birds, but there were some of them that flew into our neighborhood down in Louisiana, and I'd go visit them every evening. And I remember telling somebody in the neighborhood, they saw me walking around with binoculars, and they asked me what I was doing. I said, well, I'm going to look at the painted buntings. And they said, the what? What are you talking about? And so here's this highly elusive, beautiful bird that shows up to their neighborhood every year, and they had no clue. So for me, initially, it was just seeing these magical little moments that other people were missing. Now, for the photography, you get tired of just telling people about it, and eventually you want to show people. So now I have a tool. I have a tool to be able to show people what I saw and share in the experience, and hopefully kind of motivate them to get out there and start looking for themselves. So birds are just they're elusive, they're difficult, and I don't know. I mean, moose and all that kind of stuff, it just never really appealed to me. Now, don't get me wrong, I'll photograph a moose, but something about them birds just keep me coming back. I wish I knew what it was, Kirby. I don't know. I just love them.
They're definitely a challenge.
Indeed. Indeed.
So how much of your life do you spend in the fields in an average week?
I'm a working guy, Kirby. I mean, I've got a regular job. I'm a regular Joe. I get up at 6 a.m. and I'm sitting in my desk at 7:30 and I don't get off till 5. So, after 5 o'clock till the sun goes down, which right now in Idaho is, about 20 minutes in the evening times. I do it on my ride home. I do it in the parks, when time allots, but I'd guess probably 12 to 15 hours a week, which seems like a lot, but I don't have anything else going on. Sometimes I get backed up on my chores and stuff, chasing birds, but as often as possible, Kirby. That's the only answer I can think. I really can't quantify it. A lot, too much, my wife might say.
Yeah. So most weekends anyway, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, well, we ski a lot too. My wife and I, we hit the slopes during the winter times, but I've always got my camera with me. I'm always ready. So if the opportunity presents itself, I'm up there photographing.
So how'd you get started in the vlog?
Yeah. So by accident a little bit, as I was looking through YouTube world, I realized there was kind of a gap of the average everyday Joe photographer. There's a lot of professionals out there that are fantastic. I mean, really great photographers, and they share in these wonderful adventures. But for a guy like me that has a 9-to-5 job and, really has to think about paying the bills and all that good stuff, I look at a guy like that as almost unattainable. Like I can't go to Africa. I can't be in these beautiful destination places every weekend. So I just felt like there's a part of the story that needed to be told about the average guy that has to figure out how to spend his time at the park on the weekends. And, your local little trails that you have, 20 minutes from your house on the way home. And that's it, right? I mean, everybody else is fantastic. I mean, those guys are great. I just felt like there was a spot that I could fill, and I was excited to be able to fill it.
So how do you go about finding places to photograph?
It's the places I go all the time. I don't, I watch eBird alerts. And I'm there constantly, right? So 4 years ago, if I saw a lazuli bunting on the side of a hill, I've noticed that lazuli buntings return to the same spot almost every year. The first year when I moved here, it was all about exploring, figuring out spots. And over the last 4 years, I just keep a log of it. And you see my log, it's my Flickr account. It's got dates, exactly when I took the picture, where I was. It's not a lot of figuring anymore. It's just going back and checking my records and knowing that there's a high probability I'm going to see those birds again in the exact same spot. They're creatures of habit.
Right. So
as a matter of fact, I'll tell you, there's a video I have coming out in a couple of weeks here. I don't want to reveal too much, but there was a highly elusive couple of birds. I'll just tell you, some great gray owls that we photographed last year. Uh-huh. And when I found them this weekend, I found them in the exact tree that I last saw them last year. Wow. Think about that. Yeah. So they left, went up to Canada or wherever they went, and these snowstorms brought them all back down here. And they are not the same area. I'm telling you, the exact same tree that I photographed them in last year. I saw them there. It's amazing.
It is amazing, yeah. And they're pretty elusive normally. So
yeah, only a few sightings in the U.S. Yeah, 25 minutes from my house. Can you believe that? Yeah.
So you're shooting mostly in the Boise area?
Yeah. What I do is I draw a circle around my house, and if I can get there in 4 hours, I'll go because I like to sleep in my own bed most of the time. Now I will sleep in the van, I got rid of the van. I got a truck now, but I'll sleep in a tent. But I love hotels. I love, I don't like being out on the ground too much. But right. But yeah, if I'll try to, the Grand Teton National Park is 6 hours from my house. Yellowstone about 6.5. But if I can get there in 3 and see 50% of what I see in Grand Teton National Park, I'll stay closer. I don't
Sure.
need to see elk every 2 miles on the road. You know what I mean?
Sure. Do you get down to the birds of prey area?
My last house that we just sold was on the border of the birds of prey reservation area. I went there all the time. Some of my videos that you see, especially when I'm in that canyon, that canyon is in the birds of prey area. That's on the Snake River.
Right.
And that's one of the highest concentration of prairie falcons. There's great horned owls that all nest there and try to eat the prairie falcon babies. The golden eagles pass through that area. Tons of ferruginous and red shoulder hawks and red tail hawks. Incredible area, absolutely incredible area. So absolutely. Oh, and burrowing owls, tons of burrowing owls there. I spend a lot of time there. As a matter of fact, the majority of my summer, I'll be in the that little area photographing raptors.
Oh, cool. Nice to have that in your backyard.
No doubt, huh?
So share a few of your tips about making better bird photographs.
It's 3 things, Kirby. Good light, good subject, and a good background. I can't stress that enough. I mean, whatever it takes to get a nice, clean background, whatever it takes to get as close to your subject as reasonably possible, and just make sure you're photographing them in good light. And it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be front light. It doesn't need to be side light, but some sort of lighting that's appealing. And that's it. You figure out those 3 elements. There's 1,000 different variations of it. You're going to have fun. What I don't like seeing, Kirby, and only because I'm guilty of it, is people buy these really expensive pieces of equipment and they photograph the bird from up here, and it's down in the water. So you don't get the compression from this big 600 millimeter lens. You don't blow out the background. Do whatever you can to get eye level with your subject. That is, somebody taught that to me years ago, and it has been the absolute most valuable tip I've ever received. So I preach it like the gospel. Get eye level with your subject, get as close to them as you can, watch your light, and watch your backgrounds. That's it. That's really it.
Sounds easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's so easy, man. It's just simple, right? Notice I didn't mention equipment, though, because I've seen really good shots with marginal equipment, and I've seen some really bad shots with fantastic equipment. Equipment is about 10% of the equation. That's it.
So how do you get close? Do you use camo gear, or you use blinds, or you just sneak up on them?
I'm so sneaky, Kirby. I am sneaky. No, I'm kind of controversial in that. I don't know if you want me telling too many people, but I use the bird calls every now and then. And I don't go crazy with it. If I don't, within 30, 40 seconds, I don't see anything happening, I stop completely. And I don't stay at it for more than 1 or 2 times of using it. Once I get my shot, I'm done and I move on. Second thing, I don't do a lot of photographing around a lot of other people. So I never use a bird call in a park. I never use a bird call in a place that gets a lot of pressure. But when you see these really close-up shots of these small birds, I've been around all those guys. They're all doing it, right? They're trying to get that bird to come in a little closer. The next step, of course, is camouflage. For the ducks, I am down on my belly in camouflage on the side of the pond and just sitting there and waiting. Not move, be patient. And eventually they all got bird brains. They forget you're there and they start swimming over to you when somebody on the other side of the pond, casts a line too close to them or something like that. But getting close, there's 1,000 different ways, Kirby. And I think the most effective way is camouflage. And the second most effective way is understanding behavior and just knowing how to sneak up on them when they're not looking.
I'm sorry?
That works sometimes, not often, but.
So do you ever use a floating blind or kayak or anything else?
Oh man, do I use the kayak? Yeah, that's dangerous, by the way. I've got a video about that. It's stupidity or courage is what I called it. I've strapped that 600 millimeter to my kayak and floated around with that. That was not smart. I don't recommend it to anybody. A friend of mine has a floating blind and I'm eyeballing it. I'm looking at it and I'm going to get one. This is probably the year that I'll get one. But right now I'm laying on the side of the bank. I've got a camouflage blanket that I throw over me. And I've got some of that 3D camo, and that's about it. That's it, Kirby. I don't do much more than that.
So talk about the 10% of the time that you use gear to get those better photographs.
Yeah. I'm careful to not talk too much about gear, and because people get discouraged, right? They think the only way you can get certain shots is with that really expensive piece of equipment. And I've been that guy. I've looked at people's images and then I scroll down and I see that it was taken with a D6 and a 600 millimeter f4. And I think, well, of course, it's a great image. It's the best piece of equipment. But with any hobby, you can get 90% of the performance at about, 50%, sometimes 30% of the cost. But it's that last 10% of deliciousness. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
That's the most expensive, right?
Yeah.
When you see something out of the nicest R5 and the finest prime lens, you don't know what it is. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you can tell that it's just higher quality. But I do say this, Kirby, nothing beats getting close. And I can't stress that enough. And let me tell you where I've learned that recently. I recently bought I don't know if I can point right there, if you can see it behind me, that little small lens. It's a 500 millimeter 5.6. That lens, yeah, you can close focus at like 8.5, 9 feet. And recently I've had birds land 8.5, 9 feet right in front of me. That 600 millimeter, contrary, is 17 to 18 feet, is as close as that bird can get before it doesn't focus anymore. My images with that small lens right now are better than what I'm getting with that big 600 because I'm getting closer. It's sharper. It's rendering the image, at a closer distance, and I'm compressing the background better. Now I'm losing a little bit of light, and everybody knows light is king out there. But I'm willing to sacrifice that if I can get closer to the subject. And that little lens allows me to do it. Allows me to sneak around a little better, allows me to get lower faster. And what a lot of people don't talk about, they look at those big lenses and they think, I've got to have one. But with that big lens comes a big tripod, comes a big gimbal. It means you're carrying it on your shoulder. When you get ready to set it up, you're setting it up and you're kind of stuck there. And if that bird moves a little bit out of your sight, that means you're picking up that tripod and you're moving it to somewhere else to be able to do it. You don't have to worry about that with those smaller lenses. So you understand with that little 500, you're mobile. You can scoot around and it's light. So equipment matters, right? But equipment does one major thing for you. It just makes things a little easier. It doesn't always make it better. It just makes things easier. And that 10% is valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a 600 and the tripod and the gimbal, and I got tired of hauling it around. So I sold that and got the 500 and haven't looked back.
That's right. It's a pain in the butt. Let's be real. Let's not kid ourselves. But hey, Kirby, when you get it right with that 600, wasn't it awesome? It was special, wasn't it?
I got some bear photos and the Tetons I never would have gotten without the 600. So
yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. That's so true.
So aside from the 500, what are you photographing with?
My favorite lens in the world, a 105 macro, that new Z-line mirrorless 105. I love macro photography. Hopefully you'll see a little more of that from me this year on the YouTube channel. It is hands down the sharpest lens I've ever used. Longer lenses, the 600 and the 500, that's all I need. If I want to take a kind of a tight crop landscape shot, I'll do it with that 105. And I have a 20 millimeter 1.8, which I'll use that for astrophotography or any type of landscape photography. And then for my vlogging, this lens that I have on here is a 24-70, which of course, that's a great focal length to do portraits or really anything, landscape to portraits, you name it. But that's it. I'm a small.
So is that the Z version or the old version?
It's the Z version, yeah. And I don't do the 2.8 because with videography, I'm sorry, I'm throwing my hand up in front of it there, but with videography, you use these filters a lot to kind of darken things up. Right. And I noticed that I was never at 2.8 on, with any of my lenses that I had. I was always stopped down with videography. So I had an old 24-70 2.8 initially. I went to this 24-70 f4. It's smaller, it's lighter, and it's an extremely sharp lens. But I don't take a lot of pictures with it. I mean, it's mostly my video lens. My pictures are taken with that 21.8 and the 105 mostly.
Okay. And what camera bodies are you using?
Z6 IIs. Yeah, that's all I've got. Well, no, okay. I'm sorry. One Z6 I, one generation Z6, and then the Z6 IIs. And then I've got the Z9 on order. Hopefully it'll get to me, but I'm no professional and Nikon knows that. So I'm not in the Nikon professional services group who all got their Z9s first.
Right.
Yeah, but we'll see. That's not going to make me better. I promise you that Z9 will definitely make things easier.
Sounds like the autofocus is pretty awesome.
It's intense. It's intense. I think what I'll do is I'll just set it up in the field and go home and let it take all the good pictures, and I'll come back and check to see what I got.
There you go.
That's how easy it is now, huh?
Well, let's take a look at your photos here, or a few of them anyway. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. You see that okay?
Way back. Yeah, you went way back.
Yeah. Oh, I love these birds. Yeah. That's a great photo.
Glossy ibis, not to be confused with the whiteface ibis. So that was taken down at Bayou Sauvage. I remember that day. That was in Bayou Sauvage in Louisiana, just about 20 minutes outside of New Orleans, a little swampy area. And I had a Nikon D3200 from Best Buy, a cheap little lens, if I remember correctly, with a 55-300. So all that was taken with a kit that you can buy at Best Buy for under basically $600. Wow. And and he passed by me, and I probably cropped that in pretty good, but that was one of the first pictures I was kind of proud of back in the day. That picture's probably 8.5 to 9 years old. Oh, yeah.
Did well.
It was a fun day. Yeah, I appreciate it. The autofocus did well. You ought to see the 50 I missed because there were a bunch of them out there.
Yeah. It's a good thing about digital.
That's right. Just keep spraying and praying.
Yeah. You got the eye tack sharp, nice reflection there, and colors are great.
Yeah, that was a cool bird. That was a fun day. That shows you can get decent images with a marginally decent camera. Oh, now that's one of my favorite little things here.
Yeah, that's a great photo. I just chuckled the minute I saw it. Yeah.
So when I lived in Louisiana, our backyard, we backed up to a golf course, and for infinite distance, I mean, for 300 yards was just green behind my back porch. No houses behind me, not even one across the fairway from me. And I would set up these little perches in my backyard right next to the bird feeder. And I'd sit right outside the window of, or sit in the window of my bedroom. And if I remember correctly, this was probably taken with a 400 2.8 to really compress that background, that or a 300 2.8. I can't remember. But they would come to the feeder. Now this one is a young, probably, within a first year fledgling. And the mom would come feed them sometimes. But man, I would get so many incredible shots just looking out my window of the backyard right there. And just hours and hours of entertainment. Beautiful little birds, cardinals and finches. And oh my gosh, we had so many beautiful birds come to that feeder. That's one thing I do miss about Louisiana.
So is this a cardinal chick or?
Yeah, that's a cardinal chick. Not sure if it's going to be a male or female there, but that's definitely a first year fledgling right out the nest. Cute little sucker.
Yeah, that's a great shot.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's when I think that was with the D810. I had just gotten the D810, which was one of my favorite cameras. Fantastic camera.
And this one goes back to the Bayou a bit too.
It does. Yes. You're picking a lot of my favorites here. So down in Louisiana, about an hour outside of Lafayette, Louisiana, is a place called Jefferson Island. If you ever had Tabasco, the Tabasco sauce from Louisiana, it's from Avery Island, Louisiana, which is right next to this Jefferson Island place. And the rosette spoonbills would nest on this little island right there at the edge of their property. And the rosette spoonbills, and that's a cattle egret, and you'd see the snowy egrets, the little blue herons. Sometimes a great blue heron would be mixing there. And there were thousands of them, Kirby. I mean, and no more than 30 yards away from you at eye level. And there was a moat between where you were and where the birds were. And in that moat were 3 to 5 big 10 to 12 foot alligators. They were just waiting for birds to fall out of those nests. And we'd see it all the time. We'd see birds just get, massacred. It was sad to see, but it was a circle of life, right?
We're waiting for photographers to fall in, huh?
Or waiting for photographers. Exactly right. Sometimes you'd get there in the morning and in your spot would be one of those alligators sunning, and you would have to just pick another spot because he wasn't going to move them.
Yeah.
That was a great, and I went there probably every weekend for a couple of months. Loved photographing that area. Beautiful birds.
Sounds like a great spot.
It really is.
Must be in breeding plumage, huh?
Yeah. So he was attracting a girlfriend. That whole setting, you just saw so much behavior. And I watched them from, when they were trying to attract mates all the way to when they had their babies and they were trying to get their babies out of the nest. So we're talking, over a few months' time. And those babies, the little fledglings, were vicious. I mean, the parents would come in to feed them something and they would just attack them. I mean, brutally attack their parents to try to get food from them. I don't know. I would not want to be an egret mom. That's all I want to say. It was tough living.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Probably my favorite hummingbird picture.
Yeah. That's a dandy.
Oh, thank you. So, same thing. Backyard, we went down and bought ourselves a bottle brush tree. And that bottle brush tree, when we bought it, was about knee high. And when we finally sold our house 10 years later, it was about 11 feet high.
Wow.
And there were, during springtime when that thing would bloom, there were 10,000 blooms of those little bottle brush blooms. And those are ruby throats. And there would be swarms of them all over that bottle brush tree, just fighting one another, kind of positioning themselves. And so this was literally 10 feet from the back of my porch, and me just standing right there on my porch, taking pictures of hummingbirds. Fantastic experience.
So is this with a flash or not?
No flash. I would just put the light behind me. The sun would be behind me, and I would, make sure the subject was lit up good. And that specific shot was taken with the 400 millimeter 2.8. I had an older, like 2003 model 400 2.8 non-VR, and I'd set it up on a tripod with a gimbal and just stand there for hours photographing hummingbirds. Absolutely loved it.
Must have been a fast shutter speed.
Yeah, probably about 1/6000th of a second or something. Yeah. No, I actually. I did like getting a little wing blur. That was one of my things. Is I try to get the face sharp And there you go. That one's got a little bit of blur in the wings.
Right.
So I found out the sweet spot for that was right at like 1/1600th or 2000th of a second. You get too much past that and it freezes the wings. But if you're too much slower than that, you couldn't get the eye sharp. You with me?
Yep.
So that was kind of the sweet spot, about 1/1600th or 1/2000th of a second. And I had tons of time to experiment, Kirby. I mean, they were everywhere. Just so many of them.
Nice.
Kirby, that's what I call low-hanging fruit. You know what that is, right?
Yeah. Well, I looked it up. I thought I knew what it was, but
so that's a regular old northern mockingbird, and you couldn't swing a cat without hitting a northern mockingbird in Louisiana. They were in the Walmart parking lot. They would you'd step on them when you left outside your house, and I would spend hours, photographing these little guys. Just like I said, get eye level with it. Watching my backgrounds, and I loved photographing those birds, and they tormented the heck out of cats in our neighborhood. If a cat walked by and it was anywhere within 100 foot of their nest, they'd attack it. So one of my favorite birds to photograph, and I miss photographing those birds. I really do. Beautiful little birds.
Yeah, they are beautiful. I'm in Northwest Nevada, Carson City, and they're not nearly as common around here, but you do see them occasionally.
Never saw one in Idaho so far. I mean, it would be a rare sighting to see one here. But like I said, I mean, they were a dime a dozen in Louisiana. That's something I've always enjoyed, though, Kirby. A lot of people, and I'm one of those guys that loves chasing rare birds too. Don't get me wrong when I say this, but I love taking those common birds and trying to make something pretty out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Just because they give you a lot of opportunity, you can spend a lot of time with them, and I thoroughly enjoy that. Absolutely love it.
Well, you can tell that by looking at your photos, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I appreciate it.
So speaking of that, where can people find you in your photos?
If you want to just see the photos, Flickr, of course, and Instagram. Instagram, I post kind of my best stuff, right? And that's Bayou_Josh on Instagram. And if you want to see how I got the photo, come visit me on YouTube, and it's the same thing, Bayou Josh. And I post a video every Friday, unless it falls on a holiday, and I'll probably post on a Saturday or Sunday if that's the case. But there's one posting tomorrow morning, Friday morning. So every Friday morning, Bayou Josh on YouTube. I'd love to have you come check it out.
Yeah, that's where I found you. All right.
I appreciate it, Kirby.
So each episode of Photographing West is published on the 15th and 30th of the month. If you enjoy these podcasts, please consider purchasing your photo gear and outdoor gear from my resource page in the show notes. These are all Amazon affiliate links, so I get a small commission and you don't pay a cent more. Bye for now, and we'll be back on March 15th with wildlife photographer Lisa Langell. Don't miss it.